Nintendo is a game company not afraid to dream the impossible, like what if there's a games console that anyone can play, or what if people want a whole game about Tingle from Zelda? And that spirit of wild invention has brought Nintendo huge success over the decades, but invariably also an enormous stack of products that for whatever reason weren't the game changers we were promised and are now consigned to history's dustbin. This despite the fact that none of them are any stupider than a waggly stick console called the Wii, for goodness sake. These are the Nintendo ideas that didn't make it, but really could have worked, and are probably massive hits in some parallel universe, maybe.
When you get hold of the Nintendo Entertainment System. When you master R.O.B, the video robot.
Video games are so much a part of our lives, it's frightening to think that they were nearly lost forever. And no, I don't mean like that copy of Skyrim I put in the wrong box and haven't seen since 2013. But back in the early 80s, the video game industry crash saw revenues plummet by over 90%, as too many consoles and too many bad games flooded the market. But then enter Nintendo in 1985, with an intriguing idea that included a rebrand and a robot. Just like our idea for Luke 2.0.
What?
Nothing? Nintendo labelled their new console the Nintendo Entertainment System, to avoid painting it as just a video game console, and created the Robotic Operating Buddy, or R.O.B for short. R.O.B was far more palatable for stores to stock, with them being able to put him in the toy aisles, and helped the NES become a household name, helping to pull back the gaming industry from the brink of death. Which is really impressive, considering R.O.B was See, despite helping get the NES on store shelves, he didn't sell as well as the actual consoles.
You mean you haven't played it yet? We can play it on my Nintendo Entertainment System. It's The Legend of Zelda and it's really rad. Those creatures from Ganon are pretty bad.
This is probably because the thing R.O.B was best at was sitting there looking like an adorable robot E.T., as R.O.B only ever worked with two slightly rubbish games. One was Gyromite, where R.O.B had add-on claws and two gyros, which he could pick up to move pillars on the screen that were blocking the player's path. So basically, he was a really slow player too who just pressed A and B.
You're playing with power.
But the real classic, and we use that in the loosest sense of the word, was Stack 'em Up. Players moved 5 plastic rings around R.O.B in a convoluted puzzle game that you probably had to be a robot to enjoy. And that's if R.O.B managed to pick the things up properly. Of course, the game had no way of telling if you'd actually done it, so you could just lie to R.O.B. You were a good product. See, it's easy. But thanks to Nintendo's marketing and how endearingly useless he is, R.O.B has endured in many people's memories, to the point that he was turned into a playable character in Mario Kart DS and Super Smash Bros. Brawl, as well as having many cameo appearances in other titles. Hell, he now even has his own amiibo, arguably his interactive replacement, but, you know, one that actually does something. However, his failures didn't put off Nintendo. Even now, they're taking another dip in the waters of robotic peripherals in the form of Nintendo Labo, letting players make their own robot friends who are more fun than R.O.B. Less fun than cardboard. The R.O.B the Robot story.
You gotta see this. I need witnesses. Pikachu, over here! It listens. If only my family would. What? I'm talking to Pikachu, my new best friend. Watch this. Pikachu, come here. Pikachu, good job! Pikachu!
Who among us hasn't dreamed of chatting with Pikachu? Ask him how he gets his cheeks so rosy, or how does he wash if he's all electric, or is he seeing anyone right now?
Not that!
Well, I'm just interested in his life. As usual, Nintendo was on hand to make that vision a reality, and also as usual, long before the technology to do so was ready. And that's how the world came to be gifted with Hey You Pikachu for the N64, a game that let you interact with the world's favourite electric mouse via voice commands, immediately rendering flesh and blood pets obsolete.
Pikachu, come here!
I thought I was man's best friend.
Sorry about it, dog. Maybe try having a better catchphrase next time. Woof. Very original. Except that Pikachu received your voice commands via the N64's Voice Recognition Unit, or VRU, a microphone which plugged into the N64 and sat on top of its controller, but didn't do much else. Critics at the time complained that Pikachu responded infrequently,
Pika.
and that the game had particular trouble understanding less high-pitched voices, i.e. that it was calibrated only for the voices of young children and not grown adults, as if Pokemon is for kids or something.
Pikachu!
Which, I mean, is just ridiculous. I mean, oh no, my life choices. Nintendo's voice control plans were soon shelved, with the VRU only ever used on one other game, a Japan-only train driving sim in which the microphone could be used to announce upcoming stations to passengers. Nevertheless, it's easy to imagine an alternate history in which the technology worked a little better, and Hey You Pikachu was a smash hit that paved the way for dozens of other voice-controlled games. Who knows, if we'd got the ball rolling back then, maybe today voice control tech would be a lot more usable, and not the rubbish that occupies our living rooms today.
Pikachu.
What would that be like, eh, Siri?
Okay, I'm calling Mike.
No, not call Mike. No. Mike. No, Mike, no. Mike, you concentrate on paragliding if that's what you're doing. Mike?
The Power Glove for your NES. Now you and the games are one.
What controller could be more powerful than the human hand?
Xbox 360 controller.
Oh no, man, yeah, that was good. But regardless, you can totally understand Nintendo's thinking when, in the late 80s, it put its name to a Mattel-built glove peripheral for the NES console, assuming that gamers would be intrigued by the possibility of controlling a game not by pressing loads of buttons, but by moving their hands smoothly through the air, and then pressing loads of buttons. Plus, the Power Glove is perhaps the most famous item on this list thanks to its starring role in Nintendo commercial masquerading as a movie, The Wizard, in which it's wielded by bouffant bad boy Lucas, who has it carried around in a special case like it's the nuclear football. Mind you, there are so many buttons, one of them probably does launch a warhead.
Power Glove.
Daft, right? But, and these are words we never thought we'd say, to be fair to the Power Glove, it was an ambitious device, one that saw Nintendo trying to bring motion control to home consoles over 15 years before the Wii. And while the Power Glove failed due to its being difficult to use and having hardly any compatible games, and those compatible games being terrible, there are echoes of the glove in more contemporary devices.
The Power Glove.
Consider how its tilting controls would return in the Wiimote, for instance, or how the chunky L-bar that monitored the glove's position in space is a bit like the base stations on the HTC Vive. Still, when it comes to summing up the Power Glove, we'll let Lucas have the last word.
I love the Power Glove. It's so bad.
Yes, Lucas, it is so bad. Wow, I'm surprised Nintendo let him say that.
He had the moves, the punches, the fire. But there was one thing he would never have. A way out. Virtual Boy presents more challenges inside the third dimension. Mario Tennis, Tunnel Boxer, Red Alarm, Galactic Pinball. Virtual Boy, a 3D game for a 3D world.
In the 90s, it seemed like the possibilities for technology were limitless. Sadly, the actual technology we had at the time was very limited. I mean, you actually had to go and look at cats in real life, and they didn't like cheeseburgers. However, Nintendo was one company looking to break barriers, particularly when it came to 3D systems and creating immersive experiences. So when a US tech firm came to them with a VR device to play games in 3D, they saw an amazing opportunity. Despite the technology being half-baked, Nintendo was optimistic about the Virtual Boy's appeal. Let's take a look at some of its great features. First, the Virtual Boy was so heavy, it was actually too dangerous to be directly strapped to a player's head. Wait, that seems like a bad thing? So instead, it had to stand on two legs with the player hunched over it, unable to move freely. Still, the legs became a selling point in the advertising, with this not at all terrifying commercial.
It's only legs. There's only one problem. It needs your eyes.
Please don't take my eyes. Speaking of eyes, the other great feature the Virtual Boy had was a total lack of any colour other than red. Talk about rose-tinted glasses. I'm sorry, I'm not over that advert. Please don't take my eyes. The single-colour colour scheme meant that graphics were very limited and also caused severe eye strain for anyone using them for too long. But hey, at least the eye pain will take your mind off the severe back pain. And the fact that Nintendo want your eyes. Why are we not talking about this? Sadly, the system had to be covered in health warnings, making it far less desirable than the VR systems of today, which are more clearly marketed towards adults and allow you to move around for a far more immersive experience.
Got the hang of it now!
Stone cold killer.
Of course, VR hasn't dealt with that whole nausea thing, so in a way, the Virtual Boy is still with us. And I think we can all agree when I say, please don't take my eyes.
Game Boy がカメラになる Game Boy ポケットカメラ
These days, if you offered me a piece of technology that didn't let me take a selfie, I'd slap it out of your hand and stamp on it, and then take a selfie with you looking sad. But believe it or not, there was a time when taking photos of yourself was considered an extravagant luxury, and it was into these dark times that Nintendo shone the light that was the Game Boy camera, a chunky plastic eye that slid into the top of your Game Boy and let you vandalize your own face with the cartridge's built-in software.
Look into my eyes.
Nintendo's camera hardware was genuinely impressive, at one time holding the record as the smallest digital camera, which was great so long as you didn't mind your photos being only slightly more than 100 pixels wide and strictly black and white. Like this great photo I took of Ellen earlier.
That's a QR code.
Oh yeah. But you can't fault Nintendo's ambition for this quirky add-on. They even took time out of their busy 90s schedule of rolling around in Pokemon money to construct the Game Boy printer, which used thermal paper to bring your grainy images into the physical realm. Nevertheless, Nintendo opted to discontinue both products, and a rumoured sequel device never materialised, which must be galling now, seeing as its vandalising photo tools were basically what Snapchat filters are today, long before smartphones were even a thing. In fact, it was better than Snapchat, because if you pressed the wrong button in the menu, the camera's software would sometimes throw up an incredibly frightening image. Oh, did we say better? What we meant to say was...
Sometimes when you play a game, you develop a real connection with a character and want to keep them with you for longer. Never is this more true than in Pokemon. Isn't that right, Pikachu? Aww. Nintendo was well aware of the bonds players formed with their Pocket Monster pals, so when Pokemon Stadium came out on N64, Nintendo allowed players to transfer their Pokemon from their Game Boy saves with the transfer pack.
Now you can get Pokemon Stadium 2, the only place you can upload your Game Boy Pokemon onto your N64 and battle with over 250 characters in 3D.
That's transfer pack without a C because it's super cool, although also not cool because it looked like this. Ugh. Yes, unlike the seamless character transfers of today, where you can carry your favourite Commander Shepard through all 3 Mass Effects, or move your GTA Online character onto an entirely different system, this required an awkward-looking peripheral. In the days before online saves, the transfer pack had to be physically plugged into your N64 controller, making it weighty and annoying. Not like these modern games. Just to think, all my Zelda Switch saves are held on this tiny cartridge.
That's a Golden Graham.
Oh god, then what did I eat a bowl of for breakfast?
You better get ready for the most challenging Nintendo system ever.
Ready? Let's do it.
The new Power Pad. It's only available in Nintendo's new Power Set. Now you're playing with body power.
Before the Power Glove, there was the Power Pad, a product name clearly not run past any women. Yes, Nintendo were into the idea of intertwining gaming and fitness long before the Wii. So when Bandai came to them with the idea of a controller which used your feet instead of your thumbs, they were all for it and happy to slap their prestigious name on it. However, unlike later and better named gaming mats that had plenty of cool rhythm action games, the Power Pad was designed mostly for traditional 80s sports games. And by traditional 80s sports games, we mean stamping on 2 buttons as fast as humanly possible.
You are the game. You are the power.
Alternative marketing lines for the Power Pad included, destroy your flooring, make your downstairs neighbours hate you, and it needs your eyes. Fortunately, motion controls later received a much-needed upgrade, with Nintendo's own Wii console and other devices such as the Kinect being there for anyone who desperately wants to use their body as a controller, without lots of stamping. But it would be wrong to imply that gaming mats are useless. In fact, they make a great cape! This works. Honestly.
Now you're playing with power, body power.
So those are some of the Nintendo ideas through the ages that just didn't work, even though they really might have. And there's some parallel magic Star Trek mirror universe where we're all dancing around on dance mats and high-fiving with power gloves, but sadly it was not to be. Can you think of any other Nintendo ideas that didn't work? If you can, then let us know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this, then why not check out some of these other videos. Up here, this is one about Switch games that aren't made by Nintendo, and down here, it's one from our sister channel Outside Xbox, which is about gimmicks in games that were too beautiful for this world. And if you enjoyed this, then why not click the subscribe orb. See you next time!